My parents became aware that I'd had this party when they weren't in, so they were extremely angry. So I think I spent a lot of time blaming myself for what had happened. If I hadn't been an idiot and had this party, that wouldn't have happened. And then there was a lot of disappointment in, the way I had behaved. So there was very little support for what had happened to me. The main theme was, you betrayed us and you threw this party, and as a result that's happened. So I think I was blamed from a lot of angles. Immediately after it, I wasn't really aware of the severity of what had happened. I tried to go back to living a normal life. I knew that something bad had happened, I just didn't know exactly how to come out and say it. Eventually, about a week later, I did break down and tell my mum without knowing the correct terminology and things. I knew I didn't want the police to become involved, but that decision was taken out of my hands. Following on from that, I obviously had quite a lot of interviews and intervention and various very uncomfortable procedures, and I didn't know at that time that I had any autonomy as to whether I took part in those tests. I was led to believe that it was all mandatory, and if I didn't engage, then I was also liable to prosecution. So I had just been through one traumatic incident, and then I just felt like I was thrown into another one and another one and another one. It wasn't very supported by the police taking the statement. There wasn't any empathy at all. So I almost straight away felt like what I was saying was wrong. Perhaps I shouldn't have told them anything. Perhaps I shouldn't have told anyone. I kind of went off the rails, so I stopped wanting to go to school. I was self-harming a lot, and I remember the police officer at the time that was interviewing me saying to me, "You're not acting like a victim, you're not acting like someone that's been through a traumatic incident." So straight away I thought, I'm not telling these people anymore, I can't tell them anymore. What is a victim supposed to behave like? And then any correspondence between the police was going to my mum, so it was up to my mum to tell me anything. There was not a great path of communication there, so I was actually just left in the dark as to what was happening, and as a result I kept running away from home. I didn't feel comfortable being there anymore. For 2 years I had dropped out of school, I had moved schools, I ended up sofa surfing. Social work were looking at me on the outside and thinking, up until now I was very clever at school, I'd done well at school, so they were looking at me and saying, like, you're a troubled teenager, going to a children's home isn't the best thing for you. And what they told me to do was just to go back home and get on with my life. So to evade all of these agencies, I sofa surfed for almost 2 years between family members. I slept on the streets, and I spent those 2 years just avoiding services at all costs. I did do well at school, and it was somewhere that, I was confident in my abilities at school. All that was kind of removed from me. I felt like when I became someone that's sleeping on the streets or sofa surfing or being interviewed by police for reasons unknown to everyone else, I all of a sudden became this troublemaker as well. As far as I was aware, it was an ongoing police investigation. It got to a point where I thought, well, they'll be in touch when there's an update, and then that never ever came. So I just thought that was it, that there wasn't going to be anything going forward, that there wasn't going to be a prosecution, and I just thought, no one believed me. Let's not embarrass yourself by going and opening a can of worms. And then a number of years later, I wrote to the Procurator Fiscal, who wrote back to me and was very apologetic, but explained the circumstances for not being able to take the case forward, which was due to corroboration in Scotland, and also advised me that all correspondence would have been sent to a guardian because of my age at the time. I feel the response of the system is disappointing, to say the least. When I first opened up about what had happened to me, my recommendations to anyone that was a victim of a crime would have been, don't go to the police, don't tell anyone. And I think that was very damaging. I think the police are more equipped to respond to victims of these crimes now, and of a whole host of other crimes. There's still work to be done, but they need to hear directly from victims. And that's where I think I come in now as someone that's came through it and feels safe. I'm quite happy to go back to the police and say, this is what I think you've done wrong and this is what I think you can change. But I think the full system needs an overhaul. I don't think anything is victim-centred at all. We need to listen more to victims. I think there's this assumption that people lie about being a victim or they over-exaggerate, and I think there isn't any benefit to someone in doing that. So I think we need to strip that right back and think, what is this person telling us and what do they need? So I think it's about empowering them to decide, what is it you need right now as a victim? Do you want to go to the police, or do you not want to go to the police? If you don't want to go to the police, can you keep yourself safe? Find out if there's, another means in which you can make things easier for that person to approach the police, whether it's putting support in place for them to report something, or whether there's another agency that would perhaps be better suited. My advice for people in the same situation is to do what is right by them and what they're comfortable with. I would never force someone to go to the police. What perhaps needs to happen is, in the criminal justice system or with other organisations, if they legally have to go to the parent, they have to be informed that perhaps that person's parent isn't always going to go and reiterate that information. So they should perhaps set up a meeting thereafter with the victim to say, we've informed your mum this, now we're telling you. Or if it has to be a joint meeting with an appropriate adult present, that should happen. But either way, there should always be full acknowledgement that the victim has been informed.